The brushes moved skillfully across the canvas, creating a work of art that captured the essence of the local landscape. Fauna approached the painting, inhaling the strong scent of fresh paint and the rough texture of the fabric beneath her fingers. The soft evening light flooded the art studio, bringing with it a sense of tranquility and concentration. She stepped back, examining the abstract shapes that suggested the outline of the sleeping mountain beyond the hills. From childhood, something about that rocky formation had drawn her in, a mystery that her brushstrokes tried, unsuccessfully, to unravel. The wind whispered through the window panes, carrying the scent of damp earth and dried leaves. A shiver ran down her spine, but it wasn't fear, it was an ancient curiosity that had never abandoned her. As she mixed shades of gray and red, she remembered the stories of old Aram, the geologist who disappeared years ago after claiming to have found temporal portals in the nearby caves. No one had believed him, but Fauna kept a faded map he'd left at the tavern, marked with symbols that matched the formations of the volcano. As the sky began to darken, she finally put down her brushes. A shadow quickly passed the window, but upon looking, she saw only the movement of the trees. Valem entered the studio and observed the work in progress. This style is innovative. If we hold an exhibition, we can attract the right sponsors. His deep voice echoed through the stone walls, breaking the silence Fauna had maintained for hours. He wore a worn leather jacket, his dark eyes fixed on the canvas, as if deciphering a code. "This isn't about sponsorships," she replied, wiping her hands on a paint-stained cloth. Valem smiled, but there was no humor in his expression. "Everything needs resources, Fauna. Even your art needs light to be seen." He went to a shelf and retrieved a jar of gold paint. "I've heard rumors about expeditions to the mountain. They say anomalies have been found in the rocks, geological faults that shouldn't exist, mysterious energies." She noticed a recent scratch on his wrist, which he quickly hid, adjusting his sleeve. That night, she followed him to the outskirts of the village, where he mentioned a research camp. The trail was blocked by barbed wire, but in the distance, metallic reflections gleamed among the trees. Someone was watching them with binoculars. Valem handed her a brown envelope. "Coordinates. If you want to go alone, understand the risks." Inside were photos of rock paintings identical to the shapes in her paintings. The next morning, a thick fog covered the path to the mountain. Fauna adjusted her backpack, her fingers trembling as she touched Aram's map. The envelope also contained a journal with notes on mineral resonance and nonlinear phenomena. She advanced, her footsteps muffled by the moss covering the stones. At dawn, she found the first cave. The walls shimmered with veins of quartz, but the drawings caught her eye. Human figures with geometric patterns intertwined with spirals that seemed to pulse beneath the light of her flashlight. A deep sound vibrated in the air, like a distant drum. She photographed everything, but upon reviewing the images, she noticed shadows in the photos that weren't there when she took them. During the night, she camped near a fissure that exhaled heat. She dreamt of Aram, his face dissolving into ash, repeating, "They don't understand what they're awakening." Upon waking, she saw enormous footprints around the campsite, leading to a clearing where abandoned Odyssey drilling machines stood, the workers gone. In the center, a metal plate marked the site as Project Fissure. A radio crackled, emitting distorted voices. "Interference. The mountain is alive." She ran, her heart hammering against her ribs. Reaching the summit, she saw what had once been solid ground. The crater open, revealing not lava, but a bluish light that defied the laws of physics. In the sky, a figure hovered, its outlines oscillating between human and something far older. Valem appeared behind her, a syringe in his hand. "Sorry, Fauna. They need witnesses." She recoiled, but the ground gave way, revealing a tunnel descending into the mountain's core. The fall lasted seconds, but what she found there would change her understanding of reality. Chambers filled with hybrid organic and mechanical technology, and a pulsating core that whispered in dead languages. She ran, but each passage led her back to the beginning. In the darkness, cold hands grasped her, not to hurt, but to show. Then she understood. The mountain was a key, and something from the other side was about to pass through. Fauna awoke with the taste of earth in her mouth and the sound of voices whispering in languages that shouldn't exist. The tunnel had collapsed behind her, sealing the passage. Ahead, a light pulsed at regular intervals, like a mechanical heart. She crawled forward, her fingers touching smooth walls that weren't made of stone, but of something resembling intertwined bones. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet, almost sickening. In the center of the chamber, a spiral structure slowly rotated, projecting holograms of unknown constellations. She recognized the patterns. They were the same as the rock paintings. A buzzing began in her ears, transforming into fragmented words. Time, fracture, they come. Valem appeared suddenly, his eyes glowing with the same bluish light as the crater. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but his voice sounded distant, as if coming from underwater. She ran, but the walls rearranged themselves, creating labyrinths that changed with each step. She found a room with floating spheres, each containing scenes of dead civilizations. Submerged cities, pyramids devoured by the jungle, creatures with too many limbs. One showed the village where she lived, engulfed in flames. A familiar figure, Aram, was in the middle, laughing as he held a crystal identical to the one Valem wore around his neck. Reality crumbled. Fauna found herself back in the studio, but something was wrong. The canvases showed scenes of the erupting mountain, though the horizon outside was calm. Valem entered, carrying Aram's journal. "Do you understand now? The mountain isn't a place. It's an event." He opened the book to a page marked with a dark stain that could be blood or ink. The notes described experiments with temporal resonance, something about aligning the mountain's frequencies with Earth's to open doors. Fauna felt the map burn in her pocket, now with new symbols that weren't there before. "They will activate the project at midnight," Valem continued. "You will choose to help us control what comes, or be erased, like Aram." She looked at her own hands, which held an invisible brush, drawing patterns in the air. The studio walls began to melt, revealing the subterranean chamber behind. "There is no choice," she whispered. "There never was." Night fell on the mountain, but its peak shone as if it were day. Fauna ascended the trail, carrying the map and the journal. The wind tore pages that ignited in mid-air. At the top, she found a team of scientists, wearing silver suits, surrounding a machine that emitted a low hum. Valem was among them, now with a deep gash on his neck that didn't bleed. "It's too late," he said, pointing to the crater. The blue light had solidified, forming a bridge that ascended to the stars. Figures began to descend, their forms oscillating between human and machine. Fauna opened the journal to the page where Aram wrote, "They are not gods. They are engineers." Shouts echoed from the village below. The scientists began reciting coordinates, their voices synchronized with the machine's pulse. She ran towards the bridge, but upon touching the light, everything dissolved. She awoke in the studio, the mountain painting intact on the wall. The only difference was a new figure in the painting, herself standing in the crater, holding a crystal that shone with the same bluish light. Valem was never seen again. They say the mountain still calls for her every night, through the wind. Fauna spent days observing the altered painting, trying to understand if the figure in the crater was a promise or a threat. The village seemed normal, but strange details began to emerge. Children drawing spirals identical to those in the cave, old men murmuring about doors that shouldn't be opened. She returned to the mountain trail, this time carrying the crystal she found in the subterranean chamber, now kept in a black cloth. Approaching the barbed wire fence, she noticed the posts were melted, as if something extremely hot had passed through. She continued, feeling the ground vibrate beneath her feet. In the Project Fisher clearing, she found only debris, burned equipment, research notebooks with torn pages, and a single charred body, still clutching a fragment of Aram's map. At dawn, she climbed the western slope, where the rock exuded abnormal heat. A fissure in the mountain led her to a chamber never seen before. Inside, there was a perfect replica of her art studio, with canvases showing alternative versions of her life. In one, she was a Project Fisher scientist. In another, a child playing in the ruins of a futuristic city. In the center, a figure enveloped in bluish light, Aram, smiled. "You finally understood," he said, his voice echoing as multiple voices. "The mountain isn't a place. It's a mirror." Fauna held the crystal tighter. "Who are you?" Aram disintegrated into particles, reforming behind her. The correct question is, when are we? The chamber walls began to display scenes of the future. The village devastated by earthquakes, Valem leading a group of survivors, and herself, older, painting pictures that foretold catastrophes. The following dawn, she was back home, the crystal now embedded in her palm. The wind howled songs only she understood. She decided to paint again, but this time she used pigments from the mountain itself. The canvases came alive, showing not what was, but what could be. Visitors began to arrive at her door, speaking of dreams of portals and ancient machines. She listened in silence, knowing that the truth was stranger than any fantasy. Sometimes, at dusk, she saw Valem at the edge of the forest, watching with eyes that were no longer human. He waved, as if apologizing or warning something. The mountain remained dormant, but she felt its breath in every brushstroke, in every sigh of the wind. She knew that when it finally awoke, there would be no more choices, only the inevitable dance between what is real and what should be real. And she would be at the center, holding the brush and the crystal, writing the story that no one else could tell.